from then, and again, I'm just sort of summarizing the whole journey, they were sent to a neuro-oncologist. And they go into the neuro-oncologist office with, at this point, I guess they have back, the pathology and some of the, some of the scans, and they meet this neuro-oncologist for the first time, and he sits down looking at this young couple, and he says, "You should plan a trip to Disneyworld." And so the girl and her husband look at each other and like, "What do you mean by that?" And she doesn't remember all of the details, but certain things, I'm sure you're smiling, certain words always seem to stand out to people. And it just was a general feeling. She walked away of that, what, maybe this isn't what, what was initially presented. What she does remember is that there was, the doctor, as many doctors do, will call in a nurse to be the supportive one. So in walks a nurse who talks about support groups and different things. And as she's talking to this couple, pulls a woman into their room, and the woman was a little bit older, but very pleasant and happy looking, and this woman was meant to be a support to this new couple, and to say that she has a brain tumor, and this is things have been okay for her. And somehow in the quick dialogue it comes out that this woman has had 5 brain surgeries. So this young couple who is talking to this woman for support quickly realizes that this may be a different type of road than they're thinking. Well, there's lots of stuff that transpire, but this young couple had talked about having a family. Well, little did they know that that girl, and I'll call her a woman now because the truth is a diagnosis of a brain tumor will quickly make somebody grow up. So this woman finds out that she's pregnant. Right about the same time she finds out that the tumor has grown back. Found out over a phone call, no symptoms, nothing else. But this time that couple tried to do everything right. The first time was a little bit more rushed for them, and they sort of ended up in the hospital that was, more convenient. This time, and I might add, during this whole phase, this couple, like probably many of you, have support from friends and from family. And like many of you, they probably offered the similar advice to what some of you may get. So this couple who's dealing with a new tumor and seizures and other things that are happening and lots of fun, or getting their support from their family that they should be going to Germany, and they should go to California, and they should have this treatment because this treatment's the best and that one's the best, and hearing all these different options, which understandably people mean well, but for those of you sitting here, probably like this woman was just made everything a little bit more overwhelming. But nonetheless, you try to do your best and you take all the information that you can. And so the second time that this man needed surgery, they were doing it right. And so they researched the doctors and met with the doctors and made sure that they had the surgeons who's done the most brain tumor surgeries, and really got and actually formulated their own surgical team and had different people, and this was going to be, the most perfect surgery. Until the surgery happened, and there was a complication. And at that time, it was, again, another wonderful surgical waiting room where, the doctors come out, and for those of you who've ever sat in a surgical waiting room, there's some people who are hugging and smiling and hugging their doctor, and there's others people that are walking away in tears, and you could certainly figure out very quickly who's got some good news and who hasn't. So this girl did not have good news, and as she's pregnant, spent the next month in the ICU of a hospital because her husband was not expected to recover. And at that time, she would, not leave the bedside and hear the doctors and the residents come in all the time and talk about, you know, how he's not going to survive this, and even if he survived it, he would probably be in a vegetative state, and talking about all the negative things, until finally this girl was like, we cannot have this conversation here, and really tried to facilitate a little bit more of a positive feedback and positive conversation around them. Luckily, her husband did wake up, and at the time, while there were some wonderful people that helped them, she remembers and will tell you when you ask her one comment that one of the doctors made. And it's funny how sometimes people's words can be so powerful, but this girl will remember when you ask her all about this month in the hospital. She remembers that when her husband woke up, who was a big, strong guy and a bodybuilder and a black belt and really, you know, strength that was important, and his muscles and his size, from a month in a coma and a month on a respirator, you know, had lost a ton of weight. And so one of the doctors had commented to the other, these were residents, how he looks like a Holocaust survivor. Nonetheless, they eventually left the hospital and went through rehab and did all of these other things. And now this woman has a husband at home who requires 24-hour care, who is having seizures uncontrollable, who has speech aphasia, who can't formulate words and has problems walking, and you know, you name it, you know, this was involved, and has a newborn. You know, has some support from friends and family, but you know, that's very difficult to maintain through an extended illness. And you know, certainly as you know, you may realize, this girl reports that, you know, friends at her age, 26, 27, 28, they wanted to talk about happy things. And some of them were starting families and buying houses and getting married, and you know, this wasn't sort of what they were into at the time. You know, they weren't used to dealing with you know, somebody their own age who was dealing with such serious issues. So at the suggestion of family and friends, you know, this woman with her newborn, you know, people were concerned that maybe she was having a postpartum depression issue, or, you know, because she just couldn't sort of get out from under, you know, the issues that were going on, and trying to balance the care of both. So she said, you know what, let me go and talk to somebody, you know, a professional. So she went and sought help, you know, went to see a local therapist, nobody who was recommended, just somebody that was convenient for her. And she remembers that the therapist, you know, was just asking lots of questions about her parents and you know, history of, you know, mental illness or depression or anxiety, and really like probing at her to get a sense of, like, you know, why there was some, you know, issues of anxiety and some, you know, depressive feelings. And the girl at the end of the session was like, did you not hear me? Like, you know, I have my husband with a, you know, very sick with a ton of physical issues and a newborn and limited support and this and that. And so, needless to say, it didn't really work for a therapeutic relationship. So that girl went on and she did her own thing, and all the while, you know, people are, you know, Googling the best tumor plans, and again, you know, her husband can't walk or talk, but they should get on the plane because, you know, there's some place in Europe that's doing some experimental treatments, and, you know, there's, you know, certainly at this point, as you can imagine, both the husband and wife are not working. But because everybody is telling them about, you know, different vitamins and supplements, they're spending essentially all the money they have on, you know, these alternative treatments, which you sort of hope, you know, would work. And nonetheless, you know, things continued, and you know, they managed. You know, somehow they managed, and you know, they had some supportive friends who would, you know, encourage the woman to, you know, here she is, she's a young woman, she's got a child, that, you know what, this care is a little bit too much, and it's time that her husband go into a nursing home, because this is just too much for one person to deal with. And of course, you know, that was not an option for this woman, but this is the type of support that she had been getting. And for him, who had a great network of friends, he lost a lot of his ability to communicate. And so friends would come by, but you would see the awkwardness in that. And when this couple was with friends, the wife was the one who had to really carry the conversation to sort of ease the discomfort of the others. And so in the end, some of this, support from friends really just, just wasn't what it, what it could have been. And then one of the bigger supports for this girl was family. And then, pretty significant into her husband's injury, her mother ended up with a cancer diagnosis. And so there went another type of support. And so this woman is dealing with a new baby, a very sick husband, and now a mom who has cancer. And in the end, the happy ending, if there is one, is that the girl pulled it all together and was able to manage and was able to get by and give her husband the care that he needed, and was able to care for the daughter and manage all else that needed to be managed. And I tell the story for two reasons. I tell the story, one, because that's my story. And I tell the story, two, because it's really an awareness when I sit and think back of all the areas where somebody could have intervened or somebody could have really helped and made it just a little bit easier for us. And I think, because of my story and because of Judy Zocchi's story, why we're all here today. Because we've sort of gone this road ahead of you. And we hope that we paved the road a little bit. We feel like, for me, this was, 12 years ago. And we hope that in that time, perhaps the road was still just a fresh road out there. And that with people like me walking through it, and Judy walking through it, and countless others walking through it, our goal is that we can make it a little bit easier for you. And when I think back, to all the things that happened, and certainly that's a quick summary, as you know, your own stories would take much longer as well. I think back at all the different areas where it just could have been better for us. And I think that's really what our goal is here today, and what our goal is in doing these programs and having a support group is really, connecting to other people and really addressing what are their psychosocial issues. What is it that each person needs? And, for each person, that's very different. And for me, looking back, I could look at perhaps even just initially at the diagnosis. I was, I can't even remember any of that. But maybe, like I wasn't the one who should have been explaining that to my husband at the time. And maybe somebody should have better explained that to me. Or, better, even after the first surgery, better, maybe, we're more honest with what, we had to deal with. And, just a lot of misinformation. And I think people, and I get it because, nobody wants to be the bearer of bad news. But, it's just a lot of different ways where people could have done better. And when you're going through it, you don't always know what to ask for. And if somebody would have asked me what I would have needed, I'm not sure I would have known. I would have liked, some time. I would have liked a little bit of respite or somebody to come over and just, talk to my husband and make him feel good or make him smile for a little bit and give him a change of pace other than just looking at me. But, that was hard for somebody. And so I get all of that. But I also get, how hard it is for each of you. And whether you're the caregiver or the person living with the brain tumor, it's so hard to meet all of your goals. And when you do research on, psychosocial issues and what the goal is, there's a lot of articles out there, and they're the first ones to state that, people who are dealing with health issues, their psychosocial needs are not being met. Well, is that a surprise to anybody here? No. And so there's, suggestions and different things that that people want to put in place. And even while I was out here waiting to start, I spoke to somebody from the American Cancer Society who's a volunteer who wants to come and support people. But unfortunately, many times our needs are so great and the resources are limited.